Dolphins, so loved and respected, but tuna swim amongst them, so dolphins too are caught and killed. Years ago, these pictures prompted bans of this fishing method worldwide, but it still exists, and was recently even certified sustainable with an eco-label, the MSC.
We all want the same thing. We want to see healthy, productive oceans, and we want to see seafood supplies safeguarded for this and future generations.
Jose Luis Rodriguez catches squid with weirs. It's sustainable and ethical. He doesn't want the eco-label.
Quite frankly, MSC certification is a fraud in my view, because it helps the industrial fishing fleets.
Sharks, protectors of the oceans. Millions of them killed for their fins, for shark fin soup. Soon to be another product with the MSC seal.
The MSC has gone to the dark side entirely. Entirely.
What can I eat if I want to conserve life in the oceans? Many people eager to make the right choice rely on the blue logo of the MSC, the Marine Stewardship Council, the most widely propagated eco-label in the world. Entire supermarket chains now stock exclusively MSC certified seafood products.
I don't know much about the company itself, but it's great that there's any level of sort of standards that people are trying to encourage about sustainability and about, because we want to be around here and have more for our children as well.
Do you buy MSC certified products preferably?
To be honest, yes, but I'm never sure if it makes any difference. You just have to believe. It's like with organic, it's a matter of faith. Somehow MSC has managed to convince me.
Why do you trust them? Who do you think is behind it?
Some kind of animal rights charity, or maybe a nature conservancy organization.
Yes, the WWF is involved.
Oh, well, that's not a bad sign. That does inspire trust.
But how trustworthy is the WWF and food industry-founded seal of sustainability, really? We set off on a worldwide journey to find out. The Dutch company Ecofish fishes for plaice in the North Sea. Since 2009 with MSC certification. Ecofish protects fish stocks. Always has, even without the MSC label. So why did they pay a whole lot of money for the blue seal?
We were in a very difficult situation because we heard a rumor that supermarkets wanted to retain the unsustainable fish from the shops. And this gave us the sign that we had to change.
So you were unsustainable?
Well, I won't say that. We are not unsustainable, but we were not certified. Certification is only to prove that you are sustainable. But it won't say if you are not certified that you are not sustainable. I have proven that we are working on the right way. And to prove this, we can use also the MSC. But if you see the MSC, you know, then the discussion stops.
An eco-label to pacify consumers? How good are the MSC standards really? Fish stocks must not be endangered. That's the first MSC standard. Here, it is upheld. North Sea plaice stocks are stable, but there's more to certification than that. The fishery is not supposed to use methods that damage the ocean ecosystem, but the Ecofish vessels also use drag nets like these. They are controversial. Dr. Reinhard Fröse from the Geomar Institute in Kiel, Germany. The marine biologist supported the MSC for years, but then he studied 130 certified fisheries and discovered 1/3 of the stocks were overfished, and many used methods that damaged the ecosystem.
Bottom trawl fishing has the worst impacts of all, because you really drag a heavy chain with metal otterboards very wide across the seafloor, and basically you destroy everything in its path. Bottom trawling is also stupid because it destroys the nursery areas of the young fish. Normally these plentiful ecosystems at the seafloor, they provide shelter for the young fish, they provide food for the young fish. That's where they go first. And by destroying them, you destroy the productivity of the stocks that you are aiming for. One would think that such massive destruction of the seabed would not be eligible for an Ecolabel. But unfortunately that's wrong. So MSC has no problem certifying such bottom trawl fisheries, even if that fishing takes place in a nature reserve.
Are the Ecolabel standards too lax? And who's behind the MSC anyway? A prime address in London, seat of the MSC head office worldwide. Rupert Howes is the chief executive. MSC is the most widespread eco-label for fish worldwide. Global food giant Unilever and the WWF co-initiated the program in 1997 in response to a dramatic reduction in fish stocks. 12% of the global commercial catch now bears the MSC seal. That's thousands of certified fishing companies. Rupert Howes doesn't want the standards to be overly strict.
Is it about aiming for ever greater perfection for the top 10% of performing fisheries, or is it about engaging Asian trash fisheries, overfished fisheries, fisheries with no management whatsoever, to try and bring them up to a standard that means they might be able to sustain livelihoods, feed people, and be there into the future? I think there's a danger of expectations of perfection losing sight of the absolute challenge of shifting the entire global oceans onto a sustainable footing.
How's ambitious goal? To see the MSC label on every third fish product by 2030. This is what the MSC was promoting at Seafood Expo Global in Brussels, the world's largest seafood trade fair. The MSC calls itself an independent charity. However, the board of trustees of the MSC Foundation is dominated by representatives of the seafood industry. The MSC receives a licensing fee for every fish product sold that bears its logo. That adds up to almost 17 million euros a year, trending bullish. Ever more and ever bigger businesses want their products to bear the blue MSC seal, not least because buyers and consumers demand it. But is it even possible to catch such huge volumes of wild fish sustainably? At the trade fair, we met an MSC insider who has his doubts. His objection? The MSC board was increasingly more interested in quantity than quality. They were even certifying fisheries that openly violated their own standards. He suggested we take a closer look at the Mexican tuna fisheries. A dolphin hunt in the Pacific off the coast of Mexico with helicopters and speedboats. Amongst the dolphins swim the tuna that the fishermen are actually after. They form a feeding aggregation with the dolphins. When the dolphins are finally exhausted, a purse seine net is dropped and drawn closed. This type of fishing recently received MSC certification. The industry asserts, we let the dolphins go. But do they? We went to the States to meet up with Sam Laboudi. He now does renaturation work at home in the Midwestern forests. 30 years ago, he was the first to document on video the slaughter of the dolphins with the same fishing method. His images led to a worldwide boycott of Mexican tuna.
Most Americans had never heard about this fishery. And even though it had been around for 30 years and had killed an estimated 8 to 10 million dolphins simply to deliver cheap tuna, primarily for American consumers, there were no pictures. None to speak of. And the only viable option for documenting this fishery and what was happening with dolphins was to go undercover on board a foreign vessel as a crew member.
Okay guys, make it good.
I was a really good cook, and so they loved me. The first time I brought the camera out, we'd made a set on dolphins. I mean, there were hundreds of dolphins trapped in the net, trying to fight up just to get that breath to keep them alive a little bit longer. My job was to untangle the dead dolphins out of the net that had been caught and crushed through the power block. We killed hundreds that day. Now they have MSC, and now we can reopen the international gates of commerce to tuna that is predicated on killing thousands of dolphins a year, and the only wild species on this planet that values human life.
An eco-certified dolphin slaughter. How can that be? At the Worldwide Tuna Conference in Vigo, Spain, we ran into Antonio Suarez of Mexico, where he's known as the king of tuna. For him, Sam Labuti's film is history. That film about the dead dolphins.
Oh, that. They got a hold of some rust bucket from Panama and hung the dolphins in the nets themselves.
But the film did succeed in getting European and U.S. markets to boycott Mexican tuna, until the present. For Suarez, acquiring the MSC seal is the first step to making his tuna palatable again.
There were protests, justifiably, but in the meantime we've improved our methods. Now there are divers on board to set the dolphins free. One of my divers lost his life in the process, trying to save the life of a single dolphin. That's how we are. That's what we fight for. I will not go down in history as the great dolphin killer. We take great pains to help the trapped dolphins. That is proven by the MSC too, which doesn't just certify anybody who comes along. They assessed us for 3 years.
Are all the dolphins safe?
Yes, all of them. Almost all. Now they say we are stressing them. Well, I think the sharks stress them too, and the whales.
Are the dolphins really better protected today than they were 30 years ago when Sam Labuti was on board? A recent video by a Mexican diver. Here, dolphins are, in fact, freed from the nets, but that doesn't always pan out. Dolphins are heavy. Some get tangled up and drown. Some get injured and die later on. Though according to MSC standards, the hunting and killing of mammals as a fishing method is forbidden in principle.
The Mexican tuna fishery has recently received certification. Unfortunately, there are some dolphin deaths associated with this fishery, and no one wants to see dolphins dying. On their journey towards entering MSC certification, the Mexicans have worked incredibly hard, developing new gear and new approaches to fishing. The gear includes escape hatches to help dolphins escape. They even put divers in for the few instances where dolphins are caught in the nets to again help them escape. And over this period, the incidental deaths of dolphins has been decreased by 99.5%.
So, It's smooth sailing after all? According to the MSC, only 482 dolphins were now dying on certified Mexican ships a year. What to believe? We headed for Mexico. Labudi had thought long and hard before joining us. It was his film, after all, that had caused the Mexican tuna industry to lose millions at its most important markets. Mazatlan, capital of the state of Sinaloa and hub of the Mexican tuna industry. The MSC has certified 36 fishing vessels of the Pacific Alliance for sustainable tuna. So, at a single stroke, 80% of the country's commercial tuna catch was now MSC certified. On our way to investigate in Port Tuna, we passed the modest vessels of the coastal fishermen who fight for survival in waters that have been fished dry. A vessel belonging to the Azteca fishery had just unloaded at the docks. We wanted to try to talk with the crew, or with one of the scientific observers who accompany every fishing trip to see and report what's being caught on government contract. Their data about dolphin mortality formed the basis of the MSC decision to certify Mexican tuna. But before we could make contact, security appeared on the scene. The man tried to stop us, wanted to know our names. It seemed we weren't welcome. The next try, we set off to pay a visit to Fidemar, the Mexican trust company responsible for deploying the observers and evaluating their data. Their office was supposed to be in this neighborhood, but even with the help of a local taxi driver, we couldn't find the place. No one here had ever heard of the organization. Apparently, the address on their website was wrong.
Voy a preguntar. Aquí.
We found their new location in the end. So, who was behind Fidemar? Was it independent of the industry? And could we speak to an observer?
We're not allowed to give out that sort of information because a lot depends on our work, mainly the export business.
I thought Fidemar was a government authority.
We're a combination of private sector and federal government.
Does that also apply to your funding?
That's right. We get money from both and are somehow in the middle. Neither here nor there. At any rate, we can't provide any information.
We did manage to find out from Fidemar that during the MSC assessment, the observers had been asked to take part in a survey, albeit anonymously. Sam Labudi put in a call to the Earth Island Institute in San Diego. As a stakeholder, it had raised an objection to the certification, in vain.
I heard tell of a independent survey of observers that was done. I don't know who asked for it or requested it, but it was an online survey in Spanish and English for observers in the Mexican program to participate in.
The next morning, the Institute sent us a copy of the questionnaire the MSC assessors had given to the observers. 42 observers had responded. The results were alarming.
The observers basically said that they can't see what's going on in a large part of the fishing operation. The entire chase sequence and what happens in the nets is completely opaque to them. In fact, one of the observers said, quote, "I can provide accurate information of mortality, and I watched and I know, but not that which occurs beneath the surface and which is managed by the divers crew releasing mostly live dolphins entangled at depth, but some are dead or in undetermined condition, and they are usually very discreet in reporting details of the launch." They asked if any of the observers had experienced repercussions from making reports, and some of them said yes. And they indicated that, and this was very interesting, one of the observers said, "I lost the bonus for the trip for not bringing all the information, since I was not allowed on the bridge because I refused to change the report." Another quote, "Fishing company declared in a written statement that I was persona non grata in their boats."
The MSC assessors did not investigate the suspicious cases and did not go to sea with trawlers to find out for themselves what was really happening on board. We made contact with an observer. He said he couldn't talk about the dolphin deaths. He was sworn to secrecy. Still, he would consider talking to us. But first, he was going back out for a tour of duty at sea for 2 months. Vigo, Spain, Europe's largest fishing port, scene of one of the most controversial MSC assessment processes. This ship had just returned from a fishing voyage in the North Atlantic. The cargo coming out of the hold looked a lot like shark. The owners didn't want us to film the discharge of the cargo and sent the harbor police to put a stop to our film work, although we had a permit from the Port Authority to shoot there. We were only allowed to turn the cameras on again inside the auction hall. The Association of Galician Longline Fishery, or PAGU, with 39 ships, catches about 1 million sharks a year. They don't make much on the flesh, about €1 per kilo. The fins alone bring good money, €12 a kilo. Trade in the fins is legal, but only when they go ashore still attached to the body. Exported to Asia for shark fin soup, they are especially coveted by wealthy Chinese. In 2014, the Longline Fishery Association applied for MSC certification. What for?
Environmentalists have a lot of influence in society, and they claim we're driving the sharks to extinction. Well, that's not true. The ultra-ecos still attack us nonetheless. With the help of the MSC, we want to win over the consumers. They trust the MSC brand. There are other seals, but they're not as good. And with the MSC, we have to change, well, next to nothing, as far as our work goes.
At 75% of the total catch, shark is the main business of the Galician Association. Yet they applied for MSC certification for swordfish only, a minor portion of the catch. The assessors then designated the main catch, shark, as merely retained bycatch. A good deal for the shark hunters. MSC protection rules aren't so strict for shark as bycatch. Many marine conservationists fear that shark stocks in the Atlantic are already endangered. Friederike Kramer-Obrock from the organization Shark Project visits the shark hall regularly to monitor the size and weight of the animals. They're getting increasingly smaller, a clear sign of overfishing.
You also see very many juvenile mako sharks here, which is simply a sellout of the North Atlantic.
Why do fishermen do such a thing?
To make money. The fins, they're the gold of the oceans.
Why would the MSC certify this? The assessments are not carried out by the MSC itself, but by external commercial assessors, in this case Bureau Veritas. The fisheries are allowed to choose the certification agency themselves and also pay their assessors directly. So how independent were the inspectors from this company? The assessment report initially admits that
overfishing occurring could not be ruled out.
Yet a few pages on we read,
the stock is unlikely to be overfished.
And the final assessment.
This fishery should be certified according to the MSC standard.
The captain of a shark fishing boat told us business was bad. There were less and less sharks. To make ends meet, laws weren't always strictly adhered to way out at sea. Sharks are key to maintaining the ecological balance of the oceans. They are fished with a long line, like these used to catch cod, only even longer, 100 kilometers, and armed with over 1,000 hooks. A whole variety of animals end up as bycatch, including protected hammerhead sharks. The captain is legally obliged to itemize this bycatch in the logbook and report it. Yet there are no such entries for any of the ships of the Spanish shark hunting fleet.
They fish shark, 80% bycatch as shark. They did not mention the endangered species. But despite all of this, they get the certification. It's in vain to be stakeholder. Some think like this.
Some do, but because a particular NGO or industry member or government in some cases doesn't get the outcome they want from an objection process, does that mean the objection process outcome was wrong? There are differences of opinions. Now, the beauty of the MSC process is it builds in a requirement for transparency and stakeholder input. There has to be an annual surveillance audit. When NGOs get new evidence, they can bring it to the attention of certifiers. As I said, every 5 years we have a standards review, and that sometimes increases the standard in the light of new information and adoption by management agencies, and this builds in continual improvement.
A blue shark being heaved on board. Images recorded by a crew member of the Nuevo Ceres, one of these ships assessed for MSC certification, found on YouTube. What's shown here is banned on European ships. The fins are cut off on board. It's called finning. The finned shark bodies are kept as long as there's still space in the hold. If not, they're just thrown overboard to make room for the valuable fins. Is this still common practice today? We decided to investigate for ourselves and followed the course of the Playa del Rio, another MSC assessed ship. It calls regularly at the port of Montevideo, Uruguay, a popular transshipment point for shark fins. We were unable to secure a permit to shoot in the harbor. Secretly filmed in June 2017. The cargo consists of frozen shark. Clear to see, the bodies are all finless. We checked the ship again on its next return. The same story. But what was in the white sacks being unloaded by the ton? A ship's officer experienced in the shark trade let us in on the secret.
The sacks are full of fins. That's illegal. They have to be on the body. Like this is not allowed.
Are you sure it's fins in there?
Yes, some of them are even sticking out of the sacks. Here.
But the Uruguayan harbor police must notice that too.
Of course, but that doesn't bother them. In countries like that, they think, if we search a ship and slap a fine on them, they'll never come back to our harbor again. I've done it myself, but that was in Namibia. We had 80 tons of shark on board. That means 8 tons of fins at most. But I had 10 tons on board. So I hid the extra 2 tons of fins in the ship.
And what did you do then?
When the inspectors were gone, I unloaded them into the same container as the bodies. If I had done that here in Spain, the ship would have been grounded for years.
But how could assessors possibly deem a fishery like this worthy of MSC certification? Bureau Veritas refused to give us an interview. Vancouver, Canada. We hope to get an answer from Dr. Daniel Pauly. He's the director of the Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries and had helped found the MSC in 1997. Back then, Dr. Pauly was enthusiastic about the dialogue between industry and conservancy. He now distances himself from MSC certification practices.
All these people, or the whole complex, from the MSC and the certifying agency and the consultant that work for the certifying agency, they all know that a certification brings money to the MSC and that it therefore is an incentive to give a positive assessment, because if you give a negative assessment, you might not get another contract.
But MSC says, okay, that's not our problem because we only certified the swordfish.
Yes, all kind of things can be done once you have. If you act in bad faith, then you can lie. You can invent all kind of things, and then you into the realm of fake news. The point is that they have lost their soul, and their soul is to be a fair partner, mediating between the business community and the conservation community. And they have gone to the dark side entirely. Entirely.
A serious allegation that the MSC rejects. They maintain that with the WWF as a partner, Nature Conservancy is adequately represented. And, by the way, the fishery from Vigo had in the meantime withdrawn its MSC application, but only temporarily. They maintained that as soon as international guidelines for shark fishing were established, they would be completing the certification process for swordfish, but for shark too, at that stage officially. Galicia, Spain is the beat of the traditional coastal fishermen. José Luis Rodriguez is a squid fisher and president of the Association of Galician Small Fisheries. He lives from the ocean, does not endanger stocks, and has as good as no bycatch. This is what you'd expect to find behind an eco-label for sustainable fishery. But contrary to the shark fishermen, José Luis Rodriguez doesn't want the MSC seal.
I make the fish traps myself out of wood and wire. Our technological options are so limited that we simply aren't able to overfish. That's very good for the ocean. We also create many more jobs than the industrial fisheries. The MSC invited us and we met with them. They wanted to certify some of the species here. But we severed our ties with them because they were also negotiating with the industrial fleet owners about the same fish stocks. If the MSC only wants to certify the stocks of a certain species, but not the fishing method, then we don't want the MSC. Quite frankly, in my view, the MSC is a fraud that helps the industrial fishing fleets. The consumers are completely unaware of that. They go into the supermarket, see the MSC logo, and believe it guarantees the sustainability of the product. But they have no idea how the fish were caught, with bottom trawl nets and factory ships, or by means of traditional sustainable craftsmanship. This ship here drops several thousand tons. Wherever they fish on the planet, it will soon be the end of the line for the species they catch.
It took almost a week to discharge this whole load of tuna from the Indian Ocean. Spain's tuna armada is one of the world's largest. It's subsidized by the European Union to help counter the Chinese competition. This gives rise to enormous overcapacities. The MSC is fully on board for the tuna boom and is currently busy certifying the first big tuna fleets. Resistance, however, is beginning to form. For example, in the Azores. One man, one hook, one fish. That's how the pole and line fishermen have worked for generations. Try as they might, they can never fish away more than 20% of a school of tuna fish. The school can then recover. The big industrial ships, on the other hand, annihilate the entire school. There's not much left for them, lament the traditional pole and line fishermen. Horta, on the Azores island of Fayal, is the home port of a little tuna fleet currently fighting for survival.
Very few fish come here anymore. Several years back, there were many, many more. In my opinion, the big ships with their huge purse seine nets are to blame. They fish up everything.
That method of fishing kills the offspring in particular, which means the next generation of tuna fish.
Last year we caught 343 tons. Per seiner can catch probably 2,000 tons in one roll, probably. And then there's another issue. It's probably he was going to say that. It's that we have working in Azores something like 545 men on board, and a per seiner only have 27, 30 men on board. So you can see this is not sustainability.
The fishermen from Horta were looking sharp in their role as hosts of the first World Congress of the Pole and Line Fishermen. Delegates from Asia, Africa, and Europe had come to unite in resistance to the plunder of the world's oceans. Most people at this gathering no longer trusted the MSC. The MSC says they support sustainable artisan fishery.
To be honest, the MSC is a complete sham, just there to put window dressing on the companies that absolutely do not work sustainably. There is nothing more sustainable than us pole fishermen. One man, one hook. We're being liquidated. Soon we won't exist anymore. And then just a few will divide up the oceans amongst themselves.
Despite disappointment about the MSC seal, even some of these pole fishermen wanted to have it. They won't be able to sell their wares in Europe otherwise. The fishermen of the Maldives in the Indian Ocean are already certified.
Yeah, MSC certified our fishery, but we are struggling because if pole and line fishery, like sustainably, suspeaking its sustainability is one of the very cleanest and greenest, is equal to Also, eco-labeled same certificate carrying or logo carrying products from trawling, for example, or persenning on schools with dolphins and catching juveniles as well as other fish. I think the consumers should be able to know what is actually an eco-label.
Back in Mexico, we'd had a call. Our observer contact had returned from another long fishing trip. Would he talk with us? How many dolphins were really dying during MSC-certified tuna fishing operations in the Pacific? We waited in the fishing harbor for a contact man. The observer had accepted as an intermediary. Alejandro Villalobos Diaz, a man known here by all. He was director of the Fishery Authority of the state of Sinaloa. Now, he's retired and consults with the small-scale fishermen who feel abandoned by the government.
Soon, thousands here will be unemployed.
And there will be many dead in robberies. How are the people supposed to survive?
In the 80s, the tuna that were discharged here weighed in at 150 kilos on average. In the 90s, they were already much smaller, 70 kilos. And in the 2000s, they weigh just 25 to 30 kilos, very many juveniles. The MSC assessors can say what they will. If this keeps up, it will eventually lead to the extinction of tuna fish.
Alejandro Villalobos wanted to help us and gave the observer another call. But he had gotten cold feet, wasn't prepared to talk to us after all.
Listen, they just want to talk to you. We could meet them for breakfast. What do you think? There won't be any cameras. No one will know your name. Yes. Yes, I understand that. Take care. The situation is complicated. He said he had to sign a confidentiality agreement. If he violates it, he could be punished under Mexican law. So they all keep their mouths shut. And he would also face other threats besides. If it were to come out that someone had talked during the next voyage, about 40 days out at sea, he would have to reckon with constant serious threats of being thrown overboard, things like that. He'd experienced that himself.
Then we got good news for a change. An invitation from Manzanillo, 500 kilometers to the south, to see Antonio Suarez, the king of tuna, whom we'd met at the conference in Vigo. He said he'd allow us to shoot in the harbor of his tuna factory, part of Suarez's holding company, Grupo Mar. The Gijón had just come into port, a fishing vessel with the MSC seal. A ship like this cost $30 million. The Mexican government had subsidized its construction. Here, valuable yellowfin tuna is unloaded. We wanted to go on board to talk to the crew, or with the observer who was along for the trip to count the dead dolphins. But the company's press officer said, out of the question. In the end, we were allowed to interview the captain, Jose.
No one protects the dolphins more than we do. We have them to thank for the tuna you saw out there. How could we not love them? That says it all.
How many dolphins die in one pull, on average?
Los carrómeros?
We're a little off the questions that you've sent, and these are questions for scientists, so...
No, as the captain, he should just tell us what he sees, knows. Okay, another question. Even if it's not many, how do the dolphins die?
Wilfried, if you'd like to speak with Jose, it's not fair to put people on camera without giving them the questions before. It's not respectful. If you had sent that, then maybe he could answer it.
It's in the list. I just ask him what he sees, what happens on board, and why still dolphins die. That is a very simple question for somebody who is on board. Scientists are not on board except the observer, and they don't have the right to speak with us. So I ask the captain. It's not credible.
One more question, and then we'll just end this.
There's no.
It's not respectful.
If dolphins injure themselves in the net, what happens to them?
I wouldn't know that, but my people down in the nets do everything possible to save the dolphins.
You're not asking any of the questions that were on the list.
Nada más. Pero que te voy a decir que esto que
I have nothing more to say. Again, we do everything possible to ensure that the dolphins are unharmed.
Que nos conviene menos que pasa algo a los dolfinos.
The press officer turned on her heel and marched off. We were baffled. The true extent of the dolphin slaughter was apparently treated as a Mexican state secret. But then, suddenly, the tides turned. The observer was now prepared to talk because he trusted Alejandro, the former director of fisheries, and because we had promised him comprehensive informant protection. So we couldn't document the conversation on camera. Alejandro Villalobos attested to the eyewitness account.
He finally opened up because he trusts me. Yet he was still very tense, was constantly looking around as if somebody... Then he said, look, this is how it works. Every time many dolphins are killed, we keep quiet about it. We get a bonus for our silence. It's paid out at the end of every fishing trip, a certain sum.
How much?
He said enough for me to live well on. Up to $10,000 cash bonus for one fishing trip. Then I asked him how many dolphins die on one fishing trip. He said, I can only speak about the ships I've been on, but it's more than 100 per trip, on every ship. Yes, dolphins.
100 per fishing trip. With 36 ships making several trips a year, that would mean around 16,000 dead dolphins every year. An official from the Fisheries Ministry confirmed this number to us confidentially. But the MSC maintains only 482 dolphins a year are killed.
Observers themselves have reported that they are intimidated or bribed. So I would think the data are not reliable, and I think the mortality is much, much higher.
A few incidences of attempts at bribe were reported. The certifier has to take this into account, has to consider whether this could have influenced the scores, and if they have any doubts, they can conduct an immediate investigation. As far as we're aware, there was no evidence of bribes actually being accepted.
The MSC remains adamant. Collaborating with industry was the best way to arrive at strong and sustainable fishery practices.
MSC would like to bring fisheries into the programme and then relies on the independent assessment to determine whether or not it is sustainable. We have no preconceived ideas of what is or what isn't, but we have a growing evidence base, over 1,200 individual improvements that have been delivered by fisheries around the world, that certification can lead to real and lasting changes in the way our oceans are fished. We have to be open to all fisheries, with the exception of those fisheries using explosives and poisons, because clearly it's hard to imagine how such an approach to fishing could be sustainable.
Our impression at the end of our journey through the world of the MSC. In practice, the stated standards of the Ecolabel are interpreted quite loosely. The MSC certifies both well-managed fisheries as well as those that ravage the seas and destroy marine ecosystems. 500 million cans of tuna fish for which dolphins were killed roll off the line in this factory every year, bearing a logo that will earn the MSC lucrative license fees, a certification seal meant to ease the conscience of consumers, seducing us into buying products that do not, in fact, deserve an eco-label. Dr. Daniel Pauly, who once helped initiate the MSC, sums up.
The MSC has two groups that it's supposed to represent, industry and conservation, and it doesn't represent both groups. It was created to do that, but it doesn't. So it has been captured. And nobody had anticipated that the MSC would be captured by industry. That's the only thing that explains the MSC behavior. Otherwise, you have to assume that they are stupid or that they are nasty. I don't think that they are stupid, and they are not nasty either. They have been captured.